You are going to die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you will take your last breath, and that will be the end. And when that moment comes, what will you think about the life you've lived? Will you be proud? Will you be filled with regrets? Will you wish you had done things differently? Most people don't like thinking about death. It's uncomfortable. But French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that death must enter life only to define it. Because once you realize that your time is limited, you have to ask yourself, what should I do with my life? Sartre had an answer to this, but it wasn't comforting. Because the truth about life is both terrifying and liberating. Jean-Paul Sartre believed ignoring death is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. He is always becoming, and if it were not for the contingency of death, he would never end. Because when you confront death head-on, something strange happens. You start to understand life in a way you never have before. To Sartre, death isn't some profound truth or meaningful revelation about our existence. He viewed death as absurd, meaningless, a random external event no different from birth. Just as your birth was something you didn't choose, your death arrives as a purely external event that doesn't genuinely belong to you or define who you are. You can't truly experience your own death because in death, consciousness itself ceases. There's no awareness left to feel, reflect, or understand this supposed profound moment. Instead, death only exists for others, those left behind who must make sense of your absence. Your own death slips through your fingers before you can even grasp what it might mean. Unlike Heidegger, who argued that facing death authentically shapes who we become, Sartre thought this approach gave death far too much importance. For Heidegger, death defines our existence. It's the final truth that shapes our lives by forcing us to acknowledge our limits, our mortality, and our ultimate finitude. Heidegger said that our existence is being toward death, which means we live constantly aware that our time is finite, driving us towards authenticity. But Sartre saw this differently. He completely rejected Heidegger's view, arguing that seeing death as a defining structure of your life reduces your entire existence to something meaningless. For Sartre, death is not some ultimate boundary that gives life meaning. Instead, it's just another part of the absurdity of existence, a random event with no deeper significance. For Sartre, what makes life feel limited isn't just the fact that we'll eventually die, it's that we're constantly making choices. Every day, every moment, you're picking a path. But here's the catch. Once you choose, you can't go back and pick something else as if the first choice had never happened. And that might sound a little scary, like every decision is this huge, permanent thing, but that's not what Sartre was saying. Sure, you can't rewrite the past, but you're never stuck forever. The future is always open, and every new moment gives you another choice. Think of life like a book. You can't erase the chapters you've already written, but you can decide what happens next. So, instead of stressing about the choices you can't change, focus on the ones you can. Every decision is a chance to shape who you want to be. But acknowledging the weight of freedom is terrifying, and most people resist it. Instead, they hide from it, living in what Sartre called bad faith. Bad faith means lying to yourself to avoid the anxiety that comes with true freedom. It's easier to believe you're stuck in your circumstances, to convince yourself you have no other options. You hear people do it all the time. I can't quit my job, I have bills to pay, or I'm stuck in this relationship because it's too late to start over. Well, according to Sartre, these excuses are just comforting lies we tell ourselves to avoid facing the enormous responsibility that comes with real freedom. It's far easier to pretend you have no choice than to confront the frightening truth that at any moment you could walk away and become someone entirely new. Sartre explained this concept powerfully with the example of the waiter in a cafe. Think of someone who looks at their role as a waiter so completely and mechanically that they lose all sense of themselves as an individual. They no longer see themselves as people making choices, but merely as objects performing their role perfectly, as if they're defined entirely by external expectations. Sartre warned us that falling into such patterns reduces us from free, self-aware individuals into objects defined by others. You aren't just a waiter or a student or someone's partner. These are merely roles you've chosen. You can step away, redefine yourself, and create new meaning at any point, even though it's uncomfortable to acknowledge. This notion of freedom and self-definition leads Sartre to one of his most powerful ideas, that our identity isn't predetermined. Sartre argued there's no such thing as a fixed identity, or an essence that you are born with. His famous claim, existence precedes essence, which means you're born without a set nature or a predetermined purpose. Instead, you create your own essence through the choices you make and the actions you take. There's no divine plan, no cosmic purpose guiding your life. Instead, you are entirely responsible for crafting your identity. If you accept roles or identities assigned by society, such as being the good employee, the dutiful child, or the responsible parent, without reflection or genuine choice, you're surrendering your freedom. You're handing your power over to external standards rather than authentically defining yourself. Sartre emphasized that you must continually examine and redefine yourself, resisting the temptation to see your identity as fixed or inevitable. Yet, Sartre understood that acknowledging your freedom is inherently stressful and anxiety-inducing. He described this experience as existential anguish, saying that man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. You're free to act, yes, but you're also wholly accountable for the outcome. There are no guarantees, no reassurances, no universal guidelines to follow. Sartre explained this clearly in his famous example of the young Frenchman forced to choose between caring for his sick mother and joining the resistance against the Nazis. No moral code could dictate the right decision. Both seemed equally valid and noble. The young man realized that no moral authority could make this decision for him. Not religion, not society, not tradition. The burden of choice lay entirely upon his shoulders, and he was utterly alone in deciding his fate. Sartre emphasized that this kind of anguish is not a flaw, but a fundamental aspect of human existence. It's unavoidable, because when you choose, you're not just deciding for yourself, you're making a statement about what you believe all human beings should value. Your choices reflect your beliefs about humanity itself, and that responsibility is immense. Sartre further argued that death itself shouldn't be viewed as a profound event that grants life's ultimate meaning. Instead, he asserted that death actively strips life of meaning, leaving it hollow and absurd. If death were genuinely meaningful, we could perhaps use it to measure our lives, to reflect on what truly matters. But Sartre sees death as utterly meaningless, a purely contingent event coming from outside ourselves. He says, every existing thing is born without reason, prolongs itself out of weakness, and dies by chance. He likens death to birth. Both are simply random events that happen to us without our choice, both entirely indifferent to our projects or ambitions. Death is no more special, meaningful, or significant than the day you were born. It's just another contingent fact, nothing more. It has no lesson to teach, no revelation to offer. Sartre insists that looking for meaning in death is a fundamental mistake. Instead, meaning can only come from life itself, from your choices, your projects, and your ongoing decisions. Another critical point that Sartre raises is how our relationship with others shapes our understanding of ourselves, especially regarding death. He describes this using his famous idea of the look, which means that when others observe us, they see us as objects defined by their own perspectives and judgments. When others look at us, we become reduced to their perceptions, expectations, and roles they assign us. Sartre suggests that death works similarly. When we die, we lose the ability to look back, becoming purely objects in the eyes of others. In death, we're entirely defined by external perceptions and lose all freedom, unable to defend or redefine ourselves. By reframing death in this way, Sartre rejects any idea of death as a personal accomplishment or meaningful endpoint. He strongly opposed the comforting notion that death somehow completes your life or gives it ultimate meaning. Instead, Sartre demands that we find meaning within life itself, in the difficult, ongoing tasks of making authentic choices and courageously accepting the consequences of those decisions. The meaning of your life can't be found in death or in some external truth. It can only be created through your freedom, your honesty about who you are, and your willingness to shape your life actively. In this way, Sartre doesn't offer comforting illusions or easy answers. He forces you to confront the harsh reality of your freedom and responsibility. He demands that you stop waiting for a sign or external validation. There's no safety net, no divine blueprint, and certainly no preordained meaning to cling to. Your existence, your identity, and the purpose of your life are entirely up to you. And confronting death, accepting its meaninglessness, is the first step towards taking control. Because death will come, and when it does, the only thing left to ask will be, will you take control, choose authentically, and courageously create meaning? Or will you wait passively, letting life and death happen to you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and explore more thought-provoking content on our channel. See you in the next video.